Okay, welcome everyone. This is our second webinar in the SSG's Municipal Toolkit series. And today we'll be doing a deep dive into the GHG Calculator tool for municipal projects. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? So my name is Aisha and I'm a senior consultant with SSG. I'm based in rural Alberta and I'm joined here today by my colleague, Amy Do. She will be monitoring the chat for questions and she's based in BC. And we have our developer today, Noah Purves-Smith, who actually developed this tool, of course, and he's in Nova Scotia. So we're really right across Canada today. And I wanted to talk a bit about SSG. So who are we? We are a workers cooperative. We do a lot of climate action plans, as you can see there. And as municipalities have evolved, we have started to expand our offerings to include areas like adaptation, green buildings, and carbon budgets. And before we begin today's webinar, I'd like to ground us in what brings us here today, a deep appreciation and concern for the well-being of our planet. We who live in urban environments, we sometimes forget that the concrete and glass landscapes that we navigate each day, they come out of the imagination of a few individuals over a relatively short period of time. And at SSG, our work is aimed at reshaping our imagination so that we consider decisions for how these landscapes will be shaped and used in the years to come. We want to build them to be healthy, resilient, and equitable for all. Many of us gathered here today are based on lands that have been stewarded for time immemorial. SSG has worked with people based on the traditional lands of the Michipai in the north, to the Wijichas in the south, from the Hokiminum in the west to the Mi'kmaq in the east. Some of these lands are unceded, and we recognize the historical and continued oppression on which our current occupation of these lands is based. We believe that our work in leading a transition to a decarbonized future must also contribute to the healing and decolonizing journey that we all share together. So before we get started, I wanted to get a feel of who is in this room. So once again, I hope you can go back to your Menti, to your device, to your browser with the Menti open, and help us answer this first question. Are you using a climate accountability tool in your municipality? And if so, which ones? Climate emergency declaration or climate target or climate action plan, just check off whichever ones that you have, in your municipality. And we also have the option of if, you're not working or anything, or none that you're aware of, or even if you don't work in a municipality, you have that option too. I'll give you guys a minute to go ahead with that. So far, don't work in a municipality and then that you're aware of, there's someone with a climate action plan. I do expect a lot of cities here to have climate action plans, but we'll see. Climate action plan. No one with a climate lens framework yet? A few more plans there. Someone with a carbon budget framework, woohoo. Anyone with a TFCD going on there? Okay, let's move on to the next question, if that's okay. Now, how familiar are you yourself with this GHG Calculator tool? Did you just download it this morning, or this is the first time you'll be seeing it, or you have used the tool before, but it's just super confusing, that's why you're here today, or you are super advanced and you're ready to lead a webinar instead of us today? Do let us know. So far, no one yet who wants to lead a webinar for me, hey? Respondents, anyone else there? That's awesome. Someone can show a colleague how to use the tool. Okay, shall we move on to the next slide here? Let's start with our agenda. What we're going to do today is we'll do a quick overview of the tool and then followed by a small demonstration plus some case studies. We've allocated quite a bit of time for Q&A before we wrap up today's session. So we start today with figuring out why are we doing this? Why did we develop this tool in the first place? And the main idea is we wanted to support municipal staff in better understanding the climate impact of their decisions. So what happened was we came together with 3 communities, Calgary, Ottawa, and the region of Durham, to develop a calculator to make this process of understanding a lot easier. At least that's what we hope anyway. The calculator is an Excel add-in, and it's freely available to download from the Microsoft Store. And I'm sure most of you have done so already. And just a bit of background, when SSG was first developing the tool, our partner municipalities shared some key challenges that they were facing at the time. So the first key challenge was that decision makers, and this is everyone from elected officials, executive leadership team, senior leadership team, general managers, project managers, all the managers, they didn't really understand, right? What is the climate impacts of their decision? They can't relate it to this 2050 net zero target. We do have some climate lenses in some places where we ask, is the project going to increase or decrease GHG over time? But at that time, there was not a consistent way to estimate or analyze or compare this impact. And the second key challenge was that quantifying GHG was more at a city or community level. So you do it once a year, it's an inventory style, you do it for everyone and everything, not at the project level. And project estimation was actually quite complicated, usually outsource it to a third party. So not a quick way to do it at that time. And oops, going back. The third key challenge was that anything climate related was usually siloed to one department in the whole organization, usually the climate department or the sustainability department. And, most of the times, most municipalities is just the one person. So it's, it can be quite a bit of burden for one person to take this on. So with this in mind, we tried to come up with what features that we want to put into this tool to help the municipalities as much as we can. And these are some of the principles that guided our process. We wanted a tool that was easy to install, easy to use, easy to understand, simple enough that anyone working on projects in the city could use it. So not just the climate department who needs to be able to use it. We wanted a collaborative feature so that different departments can share and validate their outputs. And the output itself, we wanted it to be a single metric. Why? Because that way it can be used to compare different projects and also different project alternatives. And in this case, the metric is annual tons carbon dioxide equivalent. So when we say single metric, this is simple to like a project budget cost where the single metric is $1. And with this one single metric, it makes it easier for you to communicate the climate impacts, whether it's to other departments or to decision makers or even to the public. And I would also like to highlight that SSG also heard from our partners that municipalities wanted some way to track progress for CDP reporting, and this is also integrated within the tool. So I wanted to also share what it could look like within a municipality. How do you use the outputs from this tool in a municipality? So this is not one way to do it. This is what we were talking about earlier, the climate lens. It's a qualitative assessment. It gives you some idea of climate impacts, but it is quite vague. Then we have the project level assessment. So you have a form where you talk about the project a bit, when is it going to start, how much it's going to cost, and then you ask, does it move it closer to your targets or not? And then you actually put in outputs from the project to quantify what is the impact of that project, right, on emissions. And this is the final example of climate change municipal level assessment, where you actually compare the GHG Calculator tool output to a carbon budget. So if you want to know about carbon budget, we had a webinar before. You can access it in our platform. But anyway, this is the climate change assessment. So this kind of setup is pretty easy to set up. It's pretty easy to incorporate into municipal templates, things like budget requests, RFD, and you have all these different online platforms, Questica, Civic Web, use a section in the form. But the content of it gets pretty ambitious. So full disclaimer, I have not seen a municipality that actually uses this. Most municipalities go for something a lot simpler. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Noah for the tool demonstration. So Noah is a climate activist disguised as a software developer and is the primary developer behind the GHG Calculator tool for municipal projects. He is also the mastermind behind many of our tools in the Municipal Toolkit. And contrary to popular belief, he doesn't spend all his time behind a computer and enjoys playing the piano, sailing, and mountain biking. Over to you, Noah.
All right, thanks, Aisha. Let me get my screen sharing here. Mhm. All right, please let me know if that's coming up for everybody at Excel here.
Looks great, Noah.
Okay, I'm gonna go through a short demo here. I'm gonna skip over installing the tool because I believe all the instructions for installing the tool got sent out before the webinar, and maybe Amy can also share a link in the chat for if you still need to install the tool. But I'm going to go straight to, we'll take a look at the tool and try a few examples. Um, so first of all, I need to insert it into this document. So in my insert menu, and it may look slightly different on Windows versus a Mac, but it should still be in the insert menu. And I'm going to go to my add-ins where I've already got it and just click the GHG calculator. And I'm going to clear up a bit of screen space here too. I'm going to close my ribbon just to give us a bit more viewing space. Okay, so that when I added it into this document, it's popped up in the right here with a panel. It initially starts with the first time you run it, you use it, it's going to come up with some welcome slides that just give you a quick sort of overview of the tool. But I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. Oh, it's going to remind you when you first use it that we can resize this panel. So Excel kind of has a default size, but we can make that a bit wider, so it'll make it easier for us to use. So I'm just going to drag this wider, give some more space for us. Um, so when the tool launches, we go through the welcome screen. We've got a dashboard here. And in the top right, it's a little menu button. So we can go to the dashboard where we are. There's a help page where you can launch those welcome slides again. You can go to the website with tutorial videos, and you can go and get the user guide as well. And if you're having trouble or want to submit feedback or a bug, there's also a form there. About screen just gives you information background of the tool and also tells you what version we're on. So this tool was just updated yesterday with some minor changes. And basically with the tool, every time you open it again, it should generally be coming up with the latest version each time you open it. And there's also a login button. We'll get into that a little later about registering online or signing in. But basically, it does have the option. There is the option to register for an online account, and all that does is it's completely optional. It's completely free. We're not using any of the information for anything, but it allows you to, for one, save your data to the cloud, which is in a Canadian data center. And it also allows you to collaborate with colleagues and other, anybody you want. So when you go through, we'll look at that process a little later for logging in and sharing it. It will require an email address to set up, just so that you can reset your password if you need to. All that stuff's encrypted, and we wouldn't be able to retrieve anything for you. So you got to confirm your email. But yeah, so there's an online option there. But for starters, let's get into some examples. So as you see here, I'm on my projects and I've got nothing in there. And I guess a little word about projects and actions. So when we devised the tool together with Calgary and Durham and Ottawa. Every municipality has kind of different needs and different ways that they want to track things and go through things. So the project is basically just a super simple, highest level information about a group of actions. So you could and you can group those however you want. You could choose to have a new project for each action, or you could choose to for example, maybe you've got a bunch of retrofits going on with a building, and that might involve several different actions for like, implementing new HVAC equipment and improving the envelope and whatever else. You could put all those in a project, or you might decide, oh, I need a project that's going to contain all of my 2025 actions, or however you want to group things. So I'm going to go ahead and create a project. And I'm just going to call this calculator tool demo. And I can choose any of these existing regions in the tool. I think I saw Matt from Saskatoon was on the call, so we're gonna pick on Saskatoon. And here a little description, a demo of some of the calculator actions. You can enter project tags if you want. These would just be for sorting and filtering things at a later time. And I'm going to enter my contact info. Once you've set this up once, it will generally remember that. Or if you've registered for the online account, you won't need to enter this every time. And I'm going to hit save on there. And so I've saved that project, and you'll notice that it's created a new spreadsheet for me. And this spreadsheet is the project summary. And right now there's not much in here. It's just those few bits of information we entered. But there's a few tables here that are going to start to populate as we start to create some actions. So there's the emissions summary for business as usual, the projected emissions and the delta or the difference between them. And there's also energy summaries. And over here now we're working within this project. This project does not have any actions. And I now have the option to create a capital action or a policy action, and they're slightly different how they're set up, but they all end up contributing to the same project and going in the same summary tables. So for starters, I was thinking we could do a community center retrofit. Let's say we're going to replace a gas boiler with heat pumps. So I'm going to call this community center retrofit, replace gas boiler. And here we've got sectors. So there's a range of different sectors or departments that we can look at what we're trying to calculate things for. So in this case, I'm going to go to buildings, but we'll look through the list here quickly so you have a sense of what's here. There's energy and renewables, financial activities, fleet and EV infrastructure, IT, parks and urban forestry, transportation and transit, waste, and finally water and wastewater. So in this case, we're going to choose buildings. We're going to choose what type of building. So I'm going to say community center. And under the category, if we're going to replace the gas boiler, we're going to do a building equipment switch. And so depending on which sector and subsector you've chosen, the list of calculator options available will vary. And let's say this is going to happen in 2026. There's also a little section where you can put additional information. This is all optional information, but if you could enter it in here to, it's sort of to make it GPC compliant data to, if you wanted to submit stuff to CDP or things like that. In the interest of time, I'll skip through these, but yeah, there's a number of sort of meta information fields that can be added. And so here we're on, I guess there's a few stages of the calculator wizard. And so we're just filling in step 1. Let's go ahead and we'll move on to step 2 now. And so in step 2, we're going to look at the details behind this particular action we want to do. And every time a new calculator comes up that I haven't used before, a little info panel is going to come up and say, this is what this is for. So building equipment switch is used to estimate the emission reduction resulting from the difference in energy consumption between two pieces of equipment used to serve the same end use. So in this case, we're talking about heating, and we're switching out one type of heater for another. And I can bring that info panel up again anytime I want by hovering over this and clicking on the info button. So we're switching out a gas boiler. What kind of, first thing we need to know is the existing boiler, what kind of energy does it use? And so, well, it uses a little bit of grid electricity, and it also uses natural gas. And I have the choice of entering these units either as percentages, so, and then give a total, how many megajoules of energy is the whole system using, or if I had the data in a different form, like say I have my utility information and I know exactly how much electricity is being used by that facility, and I know exactly how much natural gas. Instead of percentages, I could go ahead and enter it in kilowatt hours for electricity and gigajoules of natural gas. In this case, I'm gonna say I'm just gonna use some rough percentages. So I'm gonna say about 7% of the energy is electricity, 93% is natural gas, and uses around 1.2 million megajoules per year, or 1,200 gigajoules. So that's the existing, and now we want to enter our target, which is going to be heat pumps, and that's going to be all grid electricity. So I'm just going to put 100%. And typically when we're switched to a heat pump from a gas boiler, I think we can probably reduce that down to about a third or a quarter to a third. So let's say it's going to be 400,000 megajoules. Next up, once we want to know what the financials are, how much is this system going to cost? I'll say, let's say 275,000, and calculate. And so it comes up here with a little summary of just a snapshot of annually the difference in energy use and the difference in CO2 and the cost. I can see the emissions factors that are used behind it. I can bring up information. In some cases, the references also have links directly to them. For example, here, natural gas, and I can link and see where those emissions factors are coming from. And also the global warming potential that's being used for methane and N2O. And finally, I'll hit save, and it's going to add a new worksheet for me. So here, now I've got this community center retrofit as an action, and it started in 2026, and I can see that the change in emissions year over year from existing. So this would be if we had kept with the natural gas projected. So this is what the new heat pump's going to use, and I can see the difference. And if I go over to the project worksheet, it's added these numbers into the summary tables. And on the project worksheet, they start in 2020. So we'll start, if I scroll across, we'll start to see our numbers in 2026 start to change. So that's a demo of a building equipment switch. Let's do another one. I was thinking we could do a transportation calculation, maybe looking at some fleet vehicles, electrifying the fleet a bit. So we'll call this fleet. Let's say replace fleet vans with EVs. Here we're going to replace some Ford Econoline vans with EV vans. So to find that, I'm going to find that in fleet and EV infrastructure. And we're looking at existing vehicles. And we're going to replace existing vehicles. And we could say, well, that's in 2027. And again, there's the additional fields I could fill in if we wanted or needed. I can hit continue. Again, it's coming up with the information for me about what this calculator module is intended to do. And I've got some things to fill out. So let's say we're going to replace 25 vans. And how much is each van traveling per year? We need to know. I'm going to say it's around 20,000 kilometers per year. And those are gasoline vans. I need to know roughly the mileage that those vans get. I'm going to put it in liters per 100. I'm going to say 14 liters per 100 kilometers. And we want to switch those to grid electricity powered vans. And I think we're looking at something around 0.25 kilowatt hours per kilometer, which would be about 25 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And hit continue. And the capital cost of these. So what are these going to be, like $100,000 times, we said 25 vehicles? So $2.5 million. And I'll hit calculate. And there it's come up with my summary again. And I can hit save. And there we are. It's created another new worksheet for me with the details about how this fleet vehicle replacement will affect our energy and emissions use. And I should have mentioned also, if we look at some of these that, for example, there's not just the energy and emissions that's returned in the table here, but also we get a list of all the input assumptions. So the numbers that I entered, as well as the emissions factors. So for some things like natural gas, those emissions factors are going to be the same year over year. And for other things like grid electricity, those are going to come from projections of how the grid is changing. And do we have time still for, I think we have time still for another example. We could do a policy example. You know what I will do also is I'm going to make a new project in another city, so I can just show one other aspect of the tool. Let's use Calgary, and I'm going to say Calgary Green Homes Standard. I don't know if Calgary has plans for green building standard, but let's say we're going to look at the possibility here. Explore green building standard policy. And I'll say, oh, I guess I have to enter my names there again. Okay, and I'm going to go, instead of capital action, we're going to do policy action here. And we're going to say, what do we want to call this? So, green homes, green homes standard. Trial. And I'm going to go buildings and category. I'm going to say high performance homes. And start year, let's choose 2026 again. So this module is going to estimate emissions reductions that might occur if a building is constructed to a high performance energy standard rather than existing or conventional standards. So what I need to know to calculate this is going to be how much floor space are we talking about? So let's say we're going to do this trial for let's say we're going to do this trial for 2,000 households. So some of the stuff we gotta pre-calculate on the back of a napkin or whatever in another sheet or calculator. But if we say take an average of let's say 1,600 square feet and 2,000 homes, let me just 1,600 times 2,000, so 3.2 million. Oh, that's meter. Oh, I need square feet here. So 3.2 million meters squared be a lot. And so what's our conventional energy consumption of a home built to a typical standard? And you'll notice one reason I wanted to choose Calgary is because they've got some additional energy sources that are customized to Calgary. So when we're doing any of these calculations, the emissions factors or things like solar potential all come from energy source data that's specific to that locale. And in the case of Calgary, they have a district energy plant that is used for some portions of the city, and also a green electricity contract that for municipal operations. So we would be able to choose between, standard grid electricity from the Alberta grid or from their green contract, as an example. So these are just for homes throughout the city, so it's not going to be the green municipal contract, but they are going to use some electricity, and let's say they're using some natural gas. Let's say maybe 12% electricity of their annual energy and 88% natural gas. And if we do, again, I guess we need the quick calculation here. So see 92 gigajoules a year, maybe 92,000 megajoules times 2,000 households, 184 million. And then what would the target consumption be if these same homes were using a green building standard? And so again, maybe we're going to say, well, they're going to be expected to have heat pumps or something, different, or maybe they're still allowed natural gas, but the building envelope code is different. So maybe we change this to something like 40% electricity and 60% natural gas. And our target energy use will reduce that down, let's say, to 100 million. And continue. And what's this whole thing in a trial going to cost? Are we going to be offering incentives or anything like that? So we could put in, say we're going to offer $1,000 per household that's going to try these things, and we're building 2,000 households. So there's a $2 million price tag on that. And calculate. And hit save. And again, now it's added to our workbook. So there are, I guess so that's a few examples of doing either some capital actions or policy actions. And there's a whole suite of policy actions that can range from things like, reduce transit fares or density, like restriction rules on car parking and things like that. And I said we'd do a quick look at the sharing and collaboration tools as well. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to log into my account. And actually, you'll see it's gone and loaded a bunch of other stuff that it already had in my account. And I can now also go to this shared tab, and this is projects that have been shared with me that I can work on. So I've got Jane's project from the transportation team that I can go and either look at the things that they've been entering, or I could go and add my own actions to it. So back to my projects that I've created. So this Calgary Green Home Standard, I'm going to go and edit those settings. And if I go down to the bottom to the sharing section, right now it's not turned on. If I turn the sharing on, I could go in and add users. So I could say I want to add Aisha as a collaborator on here, and I can choose whether I want to give her access to view. So that would mean she can see all the stuff I'm doing, and she could generate the worksheets, but can't change anything. I could give her edit access, which means she could create and edit and delete any of the actions, but she can't delete the project or edit the project itself. Or full admin access, which would mean that she can completely manage and edit any part of the project or the actions. And when I do add her, it's important to note the system doesn't automatically notify anybody. So it's kind of the user's responsibility to say, hey, Aisha, I've shared a project with you. So next time you log into the GHG calculator, you'll see it in there. And as long as Aisha logs in using the same email address that I've shared with, then she'll have access to the stuff that I've created. So that's a quick note on sharing and collaboration, and that's what I've got for the demo. I think we can go to some Q&A.
Yeah, we've had quite a bunch of questions in the chat and also in the Menti.
Okay.
Do you want to go from the first one?
Sure.
Okay, our first one I think was from Trevor. I wanted to know where to find the modeling assumptions and what would be a reasonable response to staff that are concerned about future updates. For example, emissions factors, etc. And we have a similar question on Menti. Let me just bring it up here. I've noticed that the emissions factors are from the Canadian National Inventory 2018. Is there any way to update the emission factors within the tool to the latest one, which is the 2025 inventory?
Right. Okay, those are good questions. So let's start with those emissions factors. They are all I guess some of them it's time for them to be updated, but we have been updating them as we've been adding new cities to the tool, and we've generally been adding the most recent data we can find at the time for that city and province that it's in. And in terms of where you can find that information about those emissions factors, there is so if I go in and view the summary card, I can pull out that, and it tells me where we looked at a different grid electricity for Saskatchewan previously, and we're actually in the process of updating that with Saskatoon. But here's one for Calgary, and it's using CER energy futures, and I can click on that link and go get the data or go see what's happening there. I can also go and look in the inputs and assumptions. It gives me the actual numbers there. So does that answer the emissions factors? We don't have a set update frequency, but I think maybe it's time for us to look at doing that as we have more people using it. I think it would not be unreasonable to ensure that we've got emissions factors being updated annually. And then the other other part of the question was, I think another part of Trevor's question was about where can we find the assumptions? So maybe beyond the emissions factors. And the only thing I'd say beyond that is like there's the global warming potential. But also each different calculator basically tells you how it's being calculated. So in this case here, you can see that that the GHGs were a product of the floor space times the energy use intensity, times each type of fuel source and the emissions factors for that fuel source. And again, the equation also gets put in the worksheet. So those are the two ways. And then there's maybe a third way, is we're working to release the code repository as open source. And so users that want to go that deeply into it could go and look at the code repository as well and see the actual code that's making those equations work. So the intention is we don't want it to be a black box. All the calculations should be clear how they're calculated and how those numbers are arrived and where the inputs assumptions are coming from.
We have a follow-up question from Jan on this. If we go into the, once the numbers are generated in the tabs, are the numbers sent as numbers or is it as equations?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, the numbers in the when they're generated in the worksheet, they're all actually just numbers. And that's an upgrade we're considering working on is making the output worksheets actually have dynamic cells in them that have the equations themselves and not just the calculated numbers. But as it stands currently, they're the actual calculated numbers.
Next question from, I think this is from Edwin. Can you then visualize the information somehow?
Like in terms of charts and things like that. There are no charts currently, but I think it's a good improvement item to have on the feature list.
Okay, also another question here from Edwin. If there's a list of 20 plus facilities, is there an easy way to input the existing energy use without picking and clicking through?
Is there an easy way to see the existing energy use without clicking through?
Yeah, to put in the energy use for each facility, if you have like 20 facilities.
Oh, sorry, I see the question now. Any way to input the existing energy use without picking and clicking through? I don't think so, but there's one little feature I could highlight, which might help somewhat, is I can take any of these actions that I've created and I can go and click on the little menu by the action and I can duplicate it. So I could say community center retrofit. Now I want to say, library retrofit. Yeah. And then I'm gonna, I can change this to other and then continue and then just tweak the numbers. So it's not really answering the question, but that's the easiest way I could think of to input a bunch of facilities and get a baseline. The other thing would be, if you have a baseline with all those facilities already, then keep using your worksheet that you've got and then do the calculations that you need to as you need to with these and copy stuff. The intention of this, I think, is to just be a simple calculator that gives you the energy and emissions impacts, and you can take those and work with them in any way you need to on your own. Like that's why it's in Excel, so you can use it however you need to.
I think the next question is quite similar. Is there a way to include total starting emissions and then projects on top of that instead of just adding all the projects together? Because in the latter case, it's hard to do the gap assessment.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that's something we're working on. So we don't have this integrated yet with, say, a GHG inventory tool. but that's something that we would like to see, I think, is that we could integrate this with an inventory and with a carbon budgeting tool. So you can have your inventory giving you your existing, you can work on different scenarios and potential actions with the calculator, and you can look at it all through a carbon budget. But today, this is the piece that we've got.
Okay, I think we asked about this. Do the regional emissions factor vary a lot when comparing to the national ones?
Oh, definitely. Well, for grid emissions, particularly for most of the other fuels, they would all be national, because it's they're literally, what are the emissions of burning and emissions of burning a liter in gasoline in Halifax are identical to burning a liter of gasoline in Edmonton. Um, but the grid emissions vary greatly, really, really widely from province to province. We've got some provinces that are heavily dependent on coal still, and others that are, just about carbon neutral. So
Yeah, I think we've gone through all the questions here.
There's quite a few in Q&A, Aisha.
yeah,
So
I see
is
some
there,
on
Yeah, it's the same ones from the chat, I think. Yeah.
is it, or I
is there
see
an
one
intent to
on,
track reduction or incorporate baseline year energy and emissions?
yeah, so I think so right now the baseline energy and emissions for a particular action are in here in the summary sheet. But if you want to have baseline for the entire city or municipality, that's the next step where we want to get to, and we don't have there's an intent to, but it's not developed yet. And I can see another question there. Any plans to add embodied energy and emissions? And I think the answer is yes, although the embodied, we've been going back and forth. The embodied energy and emissions can be really complicated. There are tools that do that. And so one way to do that would be to just add on, like, let's take this community center retrofit, and let's say we want to also add the embodied emissions of the equipment. I can add a new action and embodied emissions for retrofit. And buildings, community center. But here I'm going to choose generic emission project. And then at this point, it literally is just, I'm going to take the embodied emissions I got from another calculator and just put them in here, and then they'll be included in my project.
Okay.
So it's a sort of a workaround.
So we have some other questions from the Mentimeter. If the input and assumption section is not showing for me, could that be because I'm using an older version?
It should be showing. So if it's not, there could be a bug on the particular calculator you used, in which case we'd love to hear about it so we can fix it. But they should generally be showing. I also see another question though, if my version still shows an older version, is there a way to force an update? I'm not sure if you can see on my screen this little I button. I think you could go and clear web cache, and then close the add-in and then reinsert the add-in, and that should force it to get the newer version. But before clearing the web cache, if you've already got a project with anything in it that you want to have saved, I would advise to either save your spreadsheet somewhere or go ahead and create the online account, because then when you clear the web cache, it'll clear out all of your projects and stuff that are stored with the tool on your local device.
Okay, another question, how would you say the tool compares to others? Is it a better fit for citywide GHG or organizational GHG?
That's a That's a good question. I don't think I've evaluated enough other ones to give a good answer on how it compares. I think you can use it for a pretty wide range of citywide projects to very local specific things that maybe aren't even municipal. But that said, I think it's really for calculating things kind of on
Project
on
level.
a strategic level, a little bit more than super detailed. Oh, it's really depends on how much work you want to put into putting your inputs together, I guess.
Okay. Are there plans for a NS location Nova Scotia, I guess, to be added anytime soon?
We've been basically adding locations as municipalities approach us and ask us to customize the tool with their data. So if there's a municipality in Nova Scotia that would like the tool, we'd love to get it updated for you.
We have time for one more question if anyone has anything burning they want to ask.
There's a few more in the Q&A, Noah, if you want to take a look at those.
Yeah. Okay, so I see Trevor has a question of what would be advisable strategies to assess alternatives for a project. I think an easy one way to do that would be to use this method I showed of duplicating things, and you could build up a bunch of different alternative actions would be one way. Another way would be to create different projects and then create different actions inside those projects. And then I see one final question there too from Edwin. Does the model incorporate year-to-year growth? And so not the model incorporates year-to-year changes in grid emission factors based on projections from whatever electricity modeling source or governance source. But in terms of year-to-year growth, I guess I'm not sure how to answer that, but I'm thinking of one, for example, we could look at policies around or new road developments or something like that, or a new active transit corridor, and we're expecting population growth. We could basically again take the duplicate duplicating actions across multiple years, and we could look at it year by year and say our VKT projections are going to change. Then we, do up a bunch of different actions that show specific years.
Okay, I think we should start the Q&A now. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email Noah. Noah, do you mind passing me back the screen?
Yeah.
I'd like to invite everyone to come back to Mentimeter with me. And let's see. Okay, I wanted to ask everyone before we leave, how confident are you to start using the GHG Calculator tool? If you could go to Menti and answer this, that would be super helpful. Because a lot of people will need more practice. We might be creating a tool or a worksheet for you guys to practice on, and we'll try and share it with the email later on. And moving on to the next slide here in this last few minutes, I wanted to put in a plug for our next webinar. This will be on the Land Use Impact Calculator, and we have it scheduled for May 22nd, which is also on Thursday, same time, 11 a.m. PT. We also ask that you take a few minutes to answer the evaluation form. Again, you can scan it and it will take you to an evaluation form, and we'll ask things like, how do you like it? What do you like? what do you not like? What are the things that you would like to see? Let us know how we did today. This will really, really help us to improve our next session so that we can serve your needs better. If you have any questions, please feel free to email myself or Noah. And our emails are here on this next slide. And on behalf of Noah, Emmy, and the rest of our SSG team, we would like to thank you for spending your time with us today at this webinar. We hope you have found it useful, and we will see you at the next one. Thank you so much for being here.